Okay, so we're all set here.
Preserving Nature's Song is a contemplative program on the sixth step value and help preserve the sounds of nature. The program looks at how listening to animals and the natural world through the arts can be a tool for inspiring connection and respect for the life we share the planet with. Today, we are joined by playwright, novelist, short story writer, photographer, publisher, and animal advocate John Yunker in a discussion on how we can preserve nature's song through using creativity as the language for communicating the importance of the natural world and other animals. John Yunker is a writer of plays, short stories, and novels focused on human animal relationships. He is the co founder of Ashland Creek Press, a publisher devoted to environmental and animal rights literature. He is also the author of award winning novels that encompass topics on the natural world and is the editor of the anthologies Writing for Animals and Among Animals. His award winning plays and short stories explore the many paradigms of the human relationship with animals. John is also a photographer of wildlife and nature and teacher of Writing for Animals workshops. To excerpt a piece from his website, he writes, quote, "Animals talk all around us. They converse and whisper and shout. But because they speak a different language, we, like travelers in a foreign land, often tune out their voices," end quote. Thank you all. And thank you, John. Thank you, John Yunker. And can you share a little bit about yourself and your work as a writer, publisher, photographer, and animal advocate?
Wow. Well, thank you for the lovely introduction, Marlene. And it's wonderful to be here, taking part in this amazing festival. Well, gosh, you've said so much about me. All I can say is that I've been writing for many, many years, but I would say that my writing took a really particular direction, particular turn when I first wrote a short story called The Tourist Trail. And that story was inspired by a volunteering trip my wife and I took to Patagonia to help with a Magellanic penguin census. So we were out there in the fields or the shores and counting penguins effectively, following these naturalists. And it was a life changing experience. And at the time, I was also following the Sea Shepherd Society and had a vision of a Paul Watson like figure landing on the shore, and that led to the short story, which led to the novel, which later led to Ashland Creek Press, which I co-founded with Midge Raymond, and which led me to this point in time.
Thank you, John. In what ways do you use your work as a writer and as a photographer to help provide people with a different perspective about other animals?
Well, it's a good question. I think I write across genres, as you noted, and I think uh, that's something I always wrestle with. What's the best genre, and that would include photography as well. But with writing, is it a thriller like The Tourist Trail? Is it a short story, or is it a play? And sometimes I have ideas, things I need to get off my chest, and I struggle with what's the right genre to use, and that plays a role in what the work ultimately becomes. But it starts with the message, and the medium follows definitely. And sometimes I surprise myself with what medium we ultimately land upon. But the goal is to get people to how do you make people feel empathy if they haven't been raised to feel empathy? And empathy is difficult. No one. We're all raised with different levels of empathy because we didn't may or may not have received much empathy growing up, and to how to it. But I believe it's there in all of us. The key is how do you tap into it, and everyone has their own journey. And what I spend a lot of time studying and thinking about as a writer is all of these journeys. There's a journey I have been on, and am on today, but everyone's got their own journey. So writing and art is often about journeys. The characters have journeys. And what I talk about in the book, in our class, Writing for Animals, is how do you invite readers along on your journey and the journey of your characters. And that's, to me, where the real power of the arts lies, the writing arts, is crafting these journeys in a way that readers want to come along, and when they get to that destination, they've changed in some way, and that will hopefully tap into the empathy that's there, and hopefully over time drive people to change the way they eat, change the way they live, change the way they relate with animals.
Excellent. Thank you. Do you have any examples you might be able to share by doing a short reading?
Sure. Yes, I've got. Well, I could start with. I'll just read a short excerpt from The Tourist Trail. So this is The Tourist Trail. It's one of two novels. There's a sequel called Where Oceans Hide Their Dead. But this novel is, as I mentioned, set initially in Patagonia, and I'll begin at the beginning with Angela, who is a naturalist at this colony. And she, at night, climbs this hill and sits and looks over the horizon. The moon began to bleed out over the water, erasing the ship from view. Angela sat down in the cold dirt and waited. A penguin brushed past her sleeve on his way to an empty nest, where he stood sentry. He, too, was waiting, demonstrating his fealty for a female not yet returned, as well as guarding his home. Every year, the males were the first to arrive at Punta Verde to claim their old nests, under bushes or on the pock-marked hills, in burrows carved into earth. 100,000 of them, in a slow-motion land rush, scrambling over this 9-mile stretch of scrubland that hugged the ocean. The females took their time at sea, gorging themselves on sardine and squid, gathering their strength for the 6-month breeding season that awaited them, emerging from the water 2 weeks, give or take, after the males, fashionably late. And if they were fortunate, if everything aligned, their mates were waiting at their burrows, their homes clean and dry, new twigs laid out to form a nest. The males sang when their females returned, and the females sang in response. They flapped their wings and dueled their beaks and circled one another, orbiting, an ancient bonding ritual, an anniversary. So there's that. And, much of the novel is about, it begins with penguins, but it expands to include whales and all marine creatures. And of course, there are vegan characters as well. So it's not just about the sea, but a lot of people, the penguin is a great character because I have yet to meet anyone who doesn't like a penguin. And if you can connect a penguin, the health of the livelihood of a penguin, to stopping people from eating seafood, which absolutely has a direct effect on killing penguins because they get caught up in these nets and long lines. And not only that, overfishing has reduced their food supply. So that was one of the goals, the main goal with that novel, is to really connect these penguins that we all love and that are struggling to survive with the way we live here up north of the equator.
Thank you. Thank you, John. The theme of this program is preserving nature's song, but people don't preserve what we don't value. So a big part of the work of preserving nature's song is about helping all of us to recognize animals and nature in a deeper way that is not about how to serve us. Please tell us about how your Writing for Animals classes and Ashland Creek Press provides a platform for this.
Well, Ashland Creek Press is, well, Midge Raymond and I founded. It's a vegan-owned press. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which we're thrilled about. We're a very small press. It's a labor of love, and we one of the overarching goals with the press was to connect environmentalism with animals, with animal protection, veganism. They're inextricably linked, but in mainstream culture and in mainstream arts culture, they're not. And that's something that we have been evangelizing for many years, and a lot of our books uh, support that worldview. And the book Writing for Animals came out a few years ago. So here is Writing for Animals, and this is a collection of essays by a number of wonderful writers. And the goal was we wanted to come up with a book that we could give to writers and say, this, read this, because a lot of writers sometimes the thing about veganism and animal rights, and I always say this is, and not all of our authors are vegan. We don't ask necessarily. We'd love it if they all were, but you can be just like an Oreo can be accidentally vegan. A writer could be accidentally vegan. They can write a book that we as readers go, oh, I love this book. It speaks to me, and so we all have that potential, and writers have that potential. But this book is really designed to take writing to the next level, and and writers have a massive responsibility, and I want to inspire writers to use their skills to leverage this and rise up to the challenge. Because in the introduction, I write about the harm done to animals. For example, Jaws, the novel Jaws. The author who regrets that novel for the harm that it is. It created this monster that doesn't really exist, and now sharks, sadly, are suffering to a large degree. So I write, consider the long-term impact of so many writers treating so many animals similarly. A planet of people who do not shed tears when sharks have their fins removed, or when wolves are killed to protect cattle, who themselves are slaughtered by the billions. Other misconceptions commonly propagated by writers include pigs are messy, fish don't feel pain, horses enjoy running with humans on their backs. Even the words and phrases we use have a collective subconscious impact. Pigsty, like a beached whale, kill two birds with one stone, don't be a chicken. Through their work and their art, writers have the power to give animals a voice among humans. Yet if we give animals a lesser voice or an inauthentic voice, we do animals a disservice. For society to change its views, writers must change their views. And that's part of the introduction. But it's been very well received, and we now teach a class. We have an online class right now that anyone can take. But that's the goal, and it's to just ultimately inspire people, because a lot of writers simply don't realize it, and it's something we've had to learn. Just how do you refer to animals? It's he, she, it, and the more you start to think through the language and the power of words and the habits we've been raised into. I think, speaking of Carol Adams, who's part of this festival, she writes in one of her books, you can't argue with mythology. And I love that line, because it is difficult to argue with mythology, and that's sometimes, as a writer, we always feel we're doing. But what I tell writers is you can create new mythology. So where we're trying to destroy traditions, create new traditions, create new heroes. Who says that the archetypal hero is a discoverer or a hunter? Why can't the modern day hero be an animal rescuer? And that's something that we as a press are passionate about. We as writers, Midge and I as writers, are passionate about. And I believe history will look favorably upon writers who see that now and write to the future, because that's what we as writers are doing. We're writing to audiences today, but we're also writing to audiences tomorrow and 50 years from now. And that's what the program is about, and that's what we're all about.
Fabulous. And congratulations, John, to you and your wife for 10 years, 10-year anniversary of Ashland Creek Press.
Thanks.
What is your hope for your work with regards to its impact on inspiring compassion for other animals and respect for nature?
That's a good question. Well, ultimately it's about raising awareness. I often say that, well, ultimately, I would like, this idea of everyday heroism to be a thing and to people to feel it more, and I write about that a little bit in our plays. I wrote the play Sanctuary, which was staged a few years ago, and it was about a couple in which one person goes vegan and the other person resists. And I have often said some of the greatest, most dramatic battles happen over the dining room table, and it takes real courage in
Mhm.
relationships and families for one person to deviate from the norm or the expectations. And so I think everyone should feel a little bit heroic when they don't eat animals or when they change their livelihoods in this direction. And I also want to demystify vegans. I use a lot of humor in my plays as a way of pulling everyone together. And it's not just about doing plays that vegans enjoy. I want the plays to pull non-vegans in a way that they realize vegans are just like the rest of us. We have flaws, we have dreams. I wrote a play called Meet the Parents, MEAT, and the gist of it is it's a family of vegans, and there's one carnivore, and it's this teenage girl, and she opens the play and she's complaining about what a miserable life she's living trapped in this family of vegans. And I'm flipping that paradigm because often 9 times out of 10 when you see a movie or a book, it's always there's one lone wacky vegan, and I love to flip power dynamics, flip expectations, and I think that's a powerful tool for all writers to leverage, because we as a society are doing this right now. It's happening as we speak, as more people give up dairy and meat. We are seeing these power dynamics change and these traditions change, and it's an exciting time, an optimistic time, but also still a very challenging time.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you, John. We'd like to close the program with a few slides of your stunning photography of animals and nature. Can you tell us a bit about how photography is part of your life and about the photographs here?
We have to flip through a couple of them there. Hold on.
Sure. Sure. Well, that's Crater Lake, so
Thank
that
you.
is a
There we
yeah.
go.
Well, these are the deer. These are some local Ashland deer. It's actually there's quite a few local in-town deer in Ashland, and in fact, I meant to mention in the book Writing for Animals, there is a case study of something that we did or I did a few years ago and still do about writing letters to the editor from the animal's perspective, and it's something we work with writers to do. And there's writers now doing similar things for animal species around the country, because it provides a voice that's often ignored. And in the town of Ashland, they want to cull, quote unquote, cull deer because they're pests. And so I started writing letters to give the deer's perspective on why, this is not such a good idea. And it got people actually writing letters back to the deer. And it by giving this animal a voice in this um, human forum, it was important because if you can when people start addressing the deer as a colleague or as a person, you've already elevated the status of the deer to an extent that they're given that right to exist. And thankfully there's been no such calls yet, but it's an ongoing battle. And so that's just one small way, but a very important way that all writers, you don't even have to consider yourself a writer. I'd be happy to go to our website or email me. I'd be happy to share templates of the letters, and I encourage everyone to do it for the species in their respective neighborhoods that are under stress.
Thank you. That's powerful. And that photograph is beautiful with the
Yeah,
female
that
and the
was fun,
male
Mike.
deer. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I take a lot of bird photos mostly
Oh,
because
next
I, I
slide.
have bad I have bad eyesight, and I started taking pictures because
Ooh.
if I got a picture of I believe this is a red tail, um, then I could go home and I could go, oh, that's the bird, because I have binoculars, but I would never I could never really identify the bird that way, but a zoom lens is done wonders for me learning more about birds. And with the pandemic, I would encourage everyone to grow sunflowers because you want birds, grow sunflowers. I've got some. I don't. The seeds are not really good for humans, but they're still out there now, and there's you'd think there's nothing left, and every day there's juncos and there's and sparrows and blue jays or California jays, and it's you don't really have to go far to do amazing bird watching.
That photograph is stunning.
And the last one. There we go.
Yeah, Crater Lake in the winter. It was one of those, well, near winter. You actually they actually shut it down around this time because the snow gets so high there that you can't get to it. But there's a lot of beautiful birds there as well, nutcrackers and hawks and whatnot. But I just think photography is just another way of bringing people closer to animals. And in these are two other photos we took. Midge took this one, but they're the covers of the Among Animal short story collections, and this is an Ashland deer as well. But I love when animals are looking at you straight on because it pulls you in, and it certainly pulls me in. So
Is this Crater Lake in Oregon?
yes.
Oh,
Our one national park in Oregon. It's about 3 hours from where I live, but it's quite beautiful.
your photographs are beautiful. You're a great photographer.
Oh, thank you.
So we're good.
Hey, well, thank you, John. Thank you to you and your wife. Thank you for Ashland Creek Press and all you do with writing and helping to advance compassion in this world. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on Compassion Arts Festival 2021.
Thank you, Marlene and Ellie and Sky, for organizing this.